food to get energy. Respiration is an oxidation reaction in which carbohydrate is oxidized to produce energy. Mitochondria is the site of respiration and the energy released is stored in the form of ATP. ATP is stored in the mitochondria and is released as per the need. Now, what are the types of respiration? Respiration can be aerobic, anaerobic, or in plants and in human beings. Steps of respiration: breaking down of glucose into pyruvate, fate of pyruvic acid. Steps of respiration: respiration can be in two steps, breaking down of glucose into pyruvate and the fate of pyruvic acid. The first step, breaking down of glucose into pyruvate. This step happens in the cytoplasm. Glucose molecule is broken down into pyruvic acid. Glucose molecule is composed of 6 carbon atoms while the pyruvic acid is composed of 3 carbon atoms. Now, what is the fate of pyruvic acid? Further breaking down of pyruvic acid takes place in the mitochondria and the molecules formed are dependent upon the type of respiration in a particular organism. Respiration are of two types, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Respiration involves gaseous exchange, that is, intake of oxygen from the atmosphere and the release of carbon dioxide. This is termed as breathing, and the second one is breakdown of simple food in order to release energy inside the cell. This is called as cellular respiration. Now let's talk about aerobic respiration. This type of respiration happens in the presence of oxygen. Pyruvic acid is converted into carbon dioxide. Energy is released and water molecules is also formed at the end of this process. Anaerobic respiration. This type of respiration happens in the absence of oxygen. Pyruvic acid is either converted into ethyl alcohol or lactic acid. Ethyl alcohol is usually formed in case of anaerobic respiration in microbes like yeast or bacteria. Lactic acid is formed in some microbes as well as in some muscle cells. So what happens is glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule, gets converted into pyruvate, a 3-carbon molecule, releasing energy. Pyruvate in yeast, which has lack of oxygen, gets converted into ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide, and releases energy. Pyruvate in muscles, which has lack of oxygen, gets converted into lactic acid and releases energy. Coming to pyruvates in mitochondria, in the presence of oxygen, it gets converted into carbon dioxide, water, and releases energy. So, why do we get pain in the leg muscles while running? When someone runs too fast, he may experience throbbing pain in the leg muscles. This happens because of anaerobic respiration taking place in the muscles. During running, the energy demand from the muscle cells increases. This is compensated by anaerobic respiration and lactic acid is formed in this process. The deposition of lactic acid causes pain in the leg muscles. The pain subsides after taking rest for some time. Exchange of gases. For aerobic respirations, organisms need a continuous supply of oxygen and carbon dioxide produced during the process needs to be removed from the body. Different organisms use different methods for the intake of oxygen and expulsion of carbon dioxide. Diffusion is the method in which it is utilized by unicellular and some simple organisms. In plants, diffusion is utilized for exchange of gases. In complex animals, respiratory system does the job of exchange of animals. Gills are respiratory organs for fishes. Fishes takes in oxygen which is dissolved in water through the gills. Since availability of oxygen is less in the aquatic environment, the breathing rate of aquatic organisms is faster. Insects have a system of spiracles and tracheas which is used for taking in oxygen. Availability of oxygen is not a problem in the terrestrial environment, so breathing rate is lower as compared to in fishes. Terrestrial organisms use atmospheric oxygen for respiration, whereas aquatic organisms use dissolved oxygen for respiration. Coming to the human respiratory system. The human respiratory system is composed of a pair of lungs. These are attached to a system of tubes which open on the outside through the nostrils. Following are the main structures in the human respiratory system. In the nasal passage, we'll have nostrils, then we have pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and the alveoli as a part of the human respiratory system. Now let's look on to what happens in each. Nostrils. There are two nostrils which converge to form a nasal passage. The inner lining of the nostrils is lined by hair and remains wet due to mucus secretion. The mucus in the hair helps in filtering the dust particles out from the inhaled air. Further, air is warmed up when it enters the nasal passage. Coming to pharynx. It is a tube-like structure which continues after the nasal passage. Coming to larynx, this part comes after the pharynx, which is also called as your voice box. Next, let's talk about trachea. This is composed of rings of cartilage. Cartilaginous rings prevent the collapse of trachea in the absence of air. Bronchi. A pair of bronchi comes out from the trachea with one bronchus going to each lung. Bronchioles. A bronchus divides into branches and sub-branches inside the lungs, and these are termed as bronchioles. Alveoli. These are the air sacs at the end of the bronchioles. The alveolus is composed of a very thin membrane and it is a place where blood capillaries open. This is alveolus, where the oxygen mixes with the blood and carbon dioxide exits from the blood. The exchange of gases in alveoli takes place due to pressure differential. So, to sum up the passage, nostrils to the nasal passage via the nasal cavity enters the pharynx, then the larynx, comes the trachea, bronchi, lungs and the bronchioles, and finally to the alveolar sacs, which finally enters to the blood capillaries. Now let's talk about the breathing mechanism. The breathing mechanism of lung is controlled by the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. The diaphragm is a membrane which separates the thoracic chamber from the abdominal cavity. When the diaphragm moves down, the lungs expand and the air is inhaled. When the diaphragm moves up, the lungs contract and the air is exhaled. Differentiate between inhalation and exhalation. During inhalation, thoracic cavity or the chest cavity expands, whereas in exhalation, it contracts. The ribs lift upwards in inhalation, whereas in exhalation, the ribs moves downwards. The diaphragm becomes flat in shape, whereas it becomes dome-shaped. Volume of the lung increases and air enters the lung, whereas the volume of the lung decreases and air exits from the lungs. As we see here, diaphragm moves up, ribs move in and the air moves out. This is termed as exhalation. When the diaphragm moves down, the ribs move out and the air moves in. This is termed as inhalation. So this is all about respiration. To sum up, what did we learn in this discussion? We learned the definition of respiration. We also learned about aerobic and anaerobic respiration. We learned respiration in different organisms like fish, terrestrial organisms, insects, etc. And then we learned about the human respiratory system, the structures in it and the mechanism behind it. So that's all for today. Let's meet again with another discussion. Until then, it's Mummy's Biz signing off. Bye-bye. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon to receive notifications when we upload a video.